Yeah, I know, another sales video. But here's the difference. I'm not going to sit here pretending I was born some amazing closer. I'm not going to give you fake Photoshop screenshots of deals of closes that I never did. Because when I started, like, I was horrible, like 0 for 50 type of horrible. Every call was me word vomiting about programs and hoping that someone would just say yes. And obviously, nobody did. And in that moment, I thought maybe I'm just not cut out for sales. Fast forward to today, I've closed 20K deals paid in full. And across my career, I've closed over 7 figures in sales. Not because I found some magic script, but because I learned 4 shifts that completely changed the game. So if you're ever hung up on a call thinking like, damn, I wasted another lead, or you're sick of hearing, let me think about it, then stay with me, because in this video, I'm going to be breaking down exactly what flipped me from losing like every call to running a system where objections collapsed and clients basically closed themselves. So I'll just be real with you. I fucking sucked when I started at sales. Not like kind of rough, like 0 for 50 kind of bad. Like every call, I'd put the headphones on, I'd go on Zoom, my heart would be pounding, and my brain would scream, don't screw this up, don't sound nervous, just keep talking. Just like the Finding Dory, just keep swimming, right? So I did, and I'd ramble. Sometimes for 30, sometimes for 40 minutes straight about workouts, about accountability, my backstory, basically a fire hose of useless info. My logic was simple. Like if I said enough shit, eventually someone's going to say yes, right? But they didn't. And every single call ended the same way of, let me think about it, right? Does that sound familiar? If you've ever heard that line, you already know they're not thinking about it. That's just code for, I am not sold, but I don't want to say no to you to your face, because humans, for whatever reason, have a difficult time saying no. And every time I heard it, I'd hang up, I'd stare at the ceiling or the notes, and I'd feel like I just got punched in the face. So there wasn't, a close, there wasn't momentum. It was just another prospect, another lead gone. Cash that was like technically lit on fire. And I started telling myself the same lie that a lot of you probably watching this tell yourself all the time, that maybe I'm just not cut out for sales. Maybe it's my personality. Maybe I'll never figure this out, right? But here's the truth. That's a bunch of BS. Sales isn't about being slick or having a closer personality. It's a skill. But I didn't personally know that yet. All I knew was that I sucked at it. And what I didn't realize back then was simple. I wasn't diagnosing. I was prescribing without context. So think about it like this, all right? You go to the doctor with chest pain. The doctor doesn't pitch you on all the surgeries that they could do or you could sign up for. They don't start bragging about their credentials or pull up like their diploma. They don't pull out a PowerPoint and explain every procedure that they've ever done. They ask you questions and they diagnose before they prescribe. Because if they don't know what's really going on, how can they possibly know what you need? And that's what I was missing. I was prescribing without diagnosing. And the second I flipped that, everything changed. So here's the question. How do you actually make that shift? How do you stop pitching and start diagnosing? It comes down to asking better questions, not surface questions, not lazy questions, better questions. Because surface questions get nowhere. They don't create urgency, right? So let me show you what I mean. Here are 3 questions that completely flipped my close rate. So the first one would be, what made you book this call today? Yeah, simple, right? I know, but it's powerful. It tells you exactly why they're here instead of waiting another 6 months, right? Number 2 would be, what's been the hardest part about trying to fix this on your own, or insert solution, or what their goals are, right? Because this uncovered pain, this is then going to tell you the roadblocks, the failed attempts. And the second they start listing all of the things that they have tried that didn't work, they're literally selling themselves on why they need something different. And then number 3 is, what happens if nothing changes in the next 6 months, in the next 12 months, in the next X amount of time? This is the gut punch question. It forces them to stop fantasizing about the best case scenario and confront them with the worst case, like if they don't change, what's going to happen. Because it makes them picture themselves still stuck, still frustrated when another 6 months later comes in. And that's when urgency kicks in. And now here's the wild part. When I started using these questions, the energy on the call completely shifted. Instead of me begging them to see the value, they started convincing themselves. I would hear people say things like, yeah, I can't keep doing this. I need to fix this shit now. And all I really had to do was sit back and ask better questions and listen. So here's the first real principle. The less I talk, the more I close, which I kind of suck at. But that's because people don't want to pitch. They want to feel understood. And the second they feel like you actually get what's going on in their head, they stop resisting and start leaning in. So here's the rule I give everyone. Every closer, every coach, every gym owner that I work with, flip your ratio. It's like a first date. The first date, if you ever go, if you're a guy watching this, same thing. Talk 30%, listen 70%. If you can do that, you will double your close rate just from the energy shift. But now I need to give you the next layer, because this right here, this is the golden nugget that separates decent closers from the ones who talk a lot to the ones who get paid a lot. And when I first started, I made this mistake constantly. Probably you watching this did as well. Someone would say something like, I want to lose weight. And I'd go, awesome, I can help with that. I'd move straight into the pitch. It felt supportive, logical, and efficient, but it never closed. So never stop at surface. We're going to dig into why and explain kind of the golden nugget solution or metaphor that I have. Okay, so the first thing with when we go into the iceberg or the golden nugget analogy. So the first thing we're going to go over into the power of going deep, like emotional depth versus surface level, the golden nugget analogy, right, is kind of why you're stuck at surface level. And most reps, most closers, whatever you want to call it, they kind of live here. They ask questions like, what are your goals, or why now, right? What do you want to change? Now, those aren't bad, but this only skims the surface, right? We're here. So if you stay there, you're always going to get surface level answer, which is going to have logic and it's going to be polite, but there's going to be no urgency, right? So if we go over to like deep questions to get to the golden nugget, so now if we go over to like the golden nugget, right? Let's look at under the surface. Like real buying decisions are made. People don't spend, whether it's $200, $300, $400, $500,000 a month to just get in shape. They spend it because they're tired of hiding in photos, because they don't feel attractive with their partner, because they want their confidence back, because they're scared their kids will grow up and remember a version of them that they didn't recognize. That's what really is their buying, right? That's the consequences. That's what's going to happen if nothing changes in 6 months, right? And you only get that when you ask better questions, when you go deeper, right? Because you need to create urgency and pain. So we're going to go over now logic and emotion. So surface is logic. Like, I want to make more money. I want to get leads. I want to lose weight. I want better systems, whatever that is. But logic never drives action. Emotion does. So if I want to lose weight, what they're really saying is I hate looking in the mirror, or I'm afraid to take photos with my friends, my family. I hate how I look, right? Because emotion drives action. Emotion is what triggers commitment. Logic doesn't drive action. Urgency, investment, or emotion is what triggers commitment. And when you then learn to shift into emotion, everything changes, right? So you always, here's the framework, a sequence that I would use, whether it's on Zoom, even if it's inside DMs, or if it's in person, it pretty much always is the same. So the first step would be to mirror and clarify. So pretty simple. Why is that goal important to you? Then you stack questions. So step 2, what happens if nothing changes? How long has this been happening? What are things that you've tried in the past? Things like that, right? And then you want to anchor. So what is that costing you right now, right? And what happens if you don't change? Because by the time you've asked these, you're no longer having a polite sales conversation. You're guiding someone to tell the truth, maybe for the first time in months or years. And that's where the sale actually starts, and it actually begins at this point, right? So let me show you, I want to lose weight. Cool, we can help. Depth would be, why is that important? What happens if nothing changes? How long has that been going on? Because now they're going to say, I want confidence. I'm tired of hiding. I'm sick of waking up and feeling like this. And that's where the emotional leverage lies. That's the part of the iceberg that actually moves the scale. This is why people will stop me mid-pitch and say, I'm done. I can't keep doing this. I'm ready. I'm like ready to start committing, right? And I haven't mentioned price yet. They weren't buying a feature. They weren't buying relief. They're buying identity change. They're buying a complete lifestyle change to their life, to everything, right? So the less you talk, the more you're going to close, because sales isn't about convincing. It's about uncovering. So if I could give you only one lesson in this entire masterclass video, it's this. It's stop convincing and start diagnosing, because the better questions, the easier the sale becomes. And this was just the first shift. Okay. So next I'm going to break down the second one, which would be how I learned to reframe and anchor value in a way that made price objections collapse before they even came up. So once I finally figured out how to ask better questions, I thought I had this whole sales thing cracked. I was listing more, I was uncovering pain, I was diagnosing instead of pitching, and the calls felt significantly better. Obviously my sales percentage increased, but then I slammed headfirst into the next wall, which, if you know anything about sales, it's the price objection, right? So I'd go through a call, everything would flow. Like the prospect would nod along, they'd agree, they need help, they'd even admit that they've been struggling for years, and then I tell them the price. And it wouldn't really matter if it was $100, $500, $1,000. Suddenly, everything collapsed. And then it's too expensive. I need to think about it. I have to talk to my spouse. I need to talk to my dog, whatever it was. And it felt like a gut punch every single time. I don't know why the photo is not loading, but whatever. The worst part, honestly, is I didn't know how to handle it, because I'd freeze up and I'd start stuttering and I'd start over explaining and sometimes even offering discounts just to try to salvage this deal, because I sucked at overcoming objections, which by the way, almost never work because, like, let's be real, if you have to offer a discount to get someone to say yes, like, that's not a good prospect to deal with. But even when it did, it just made me look desperate. And then they would like want a refund or like charge back or all this stuff. Like, I can't tell you how many times I lost sleep at night where I laid awake after a sales call thinking I did everything right and I asked all the right questions, I uncovered the pain, but why the bleep won't they buy? And here's the truth that I had to learn the much, much hard way, which I wish I had this video when I started, right? Price objections are never about money, 99 times out of 100, especially if your lead is qualified properly and it's nurtured properly. That's a whole other story, okay? They're about value. So people will find the money for what they believe is worth it. I've had people take out a loan. I didn't encourage it, but they did because they really want to change. So it wasn't about anchoring value. It was about letting prospects compare my $300 a month coaching program to their $40 a month Planet Fitness membership, right? And when you let them compare those two things side by side, you will lose every single time because it becomes logical, right? So the next step would be, or the next lesson that I had to learn was stop letting them compare you to the wrong thing. Because if you think you're just another gym membership, you'll always lose the price battle. You'll have to reframe and anchor your value against the real cost of staying stuck. So that's the next thing we're going to talk about, which is the reframe that changed everything. So the breakthrough for me was learning how to shift the comparison, because prospects aren't just comparing your program to other gyms. They're also comparing it, even if they don't realize it, to the cost of doing nothing, the cost of inaction. Think about it. What is more costly, them having medical bills or versus them staying unhealthy? Or let me redo that. Think about it. What's it costing them in medical bills or fast food when they stay unhealthy? So what's it costing them in wasted supplements or random diets and quick fixes that never work? You know, what's it costing them in lost time, in lost energy, in lost confidence, in lost of living life, or worse, like not being able to see their daughter walk down the aisle? That's the real price. So instead of trying to justify why my coaching costs $300 a month, $500 a month, $1,000 a month, or your gym charges $1 bajillion a month, it doesn't matter. I started anchoring it against the thousands of dollars that they'd waste staying stuck. So I'd say things like, look, people spend 30 grand on some crazy gastric bypass surgery. They'll spend $12,000 a year on medications, or don't even get me started on those. You know, they'll waste years bouncing from one failed program to the next. Compared to that, investing a few $100s a month to actually fix your XYZ problem and change your life isn't that expensive. It's the cheapest decision you'll ever make. That's reframing, anchoring, right? And once I started doing it, the too expensive objection magically disappeared. If this is really clicking for you, if you're really enjoying this and you're realizing that you've been losing sales, not because of price, but because you never anchored value the right way, don't wait. Click the link below and book a game plan chat, or it's going to probably be called a bottleneck call with me. On that call, we will baseline your sales process, show you where you're bleeding deals, and map out how to reframe and anchor value so your close rate pretty much doubles in the next 90 days. If you're serious, book it now. It's free. I don't take and work with everyone. And if you're still watching, so now we're going to go into even deeper because there's 2 more principles that you need to learn. So I'll never forget the first time that I anchored correct. Like, the prospect literally was like, oh my God, wow, I never thought about it that way, right? I've wasted thousands and thousands on supplements and other programs that didn't work. So for the first time, I saw their shoulders drop or their jaw drop. And it wasn't like me fighting them anymore, right? They weren't defending their wallet, their bank account. They were nodding, agreeing, and basically closing themselves. That's the thing. All of you need to understand watching this. You need to get your prospects to basically convince and close themselves. Otherwise, it's never going to work, right? Unless, like, this is B2C specific. If it's B2B, that's more logical. But even still, there needs to be some consequences. Like, if you don't change and get more revenue for your business, what's going to happen? Oh, I'm going to close. But it's more logical because people think, like, logically, oh, I want to make more money. But with this, they're going to die. I realize anchoring is not a trick. It's not manipulation. It's simply putting the price in the right context. Because here's the thing. People don't buy based on absolute numbers. They buy based on comparison. So $300 a month feels expensive if you compare it to Netflix. But $300 feels really cheap if you compare it to the cost of diabetes, seeing your daughter walk down the aisle, low confidence, and wasting years of your life. That's the identity shift I had to make as a salesperson. Stop defending the number, whatever it is. Start reframing the comparison. So that's like the whole big principle. Number 2 is don't just quote your price. Anchor it against the cost of doing nothing. Because when they realize staying stuck costs more than working with you or whatever program you're offering, the price objection pretty much collapses. And once you've done that, you'll see something amazing. Prospects stop saying, wow, that's really expensive. And they start saying, how do we get started? The amount of times I've had objectionless closes is a lot, right? So just to recap, I sucked at sales, not because I talk too much, even though I'm really good at that, but because I let prospects compare my offer to the wrong thing. And the second I learned to reframe and anchor value, everything shifted. And that was just the second lesson. So now we're going to break down the third and the fourth, which is how I learned to handle objections with logic and identity instead of panicking or caving when someone pushed back. Okay, so let's recap really quick. I sucked at sales because I pitched instead of diagnosed. I let price kill me instead of anchoring value. And I panicked at objections instead of seeing them as opportunity. And then once I flipped those three things, my sales completely changed. But there's still one more piece, and it's what all of this ties together. So in the next section, I'll share the fourth thing I learned, which is how to future pace and create an identity shift so powerful that the prospects close themselves before I even have to ask. So even after I learned how to ask better questions, I figured out how to anchor value, even after I stopped panicking at objections, I still had a big problem, which was the close. And I hated it. Every time I got to the end of the call, my stomach would drop because I felt like I was about to pressure someone into buying. And so I start fumbling with words. I'd sound less confident. Sometimes I wouldn't even ask for the sale directly. I'd kind of just drift. And guess what? People can feel that. They can sense that. If you're hesitant, if you're nervous, if you don't believe in your own close, your own product, your own service, they sure as hell are not going to either, and they're not going to buy. So I had to figure it out. How do I close in a way that doesn't feel like I'm begging? How do I make it natural? And the answer was future pacing. So future pacing is basically when you paint the picture of who they're about to become, right? That's why you need to get golden nuggets. You need to ask consequence. So it's so clear, it's so vivid that they want it before you even ask. And that's when closing stopped feeling awkward and started feeling really easy. Closing is not about like forcing, right? It's about helping them see the future version of themselves and why they need to invest and why they need to change. Because nobody gets excited about a 12-week contract. They get excited about becoming that person they've always wanted to be. So if closing feels pushy to you, it's because you're selling programs, not futures. So here's how I started doing it. At the end of the call, after we talk through their struggles, their goals, their fears, instead of saying, so do you want to sign up? I'd ask, can I share with you what the next 90 days or 180 days, whatever, could actually look like? And then I'd future pace it. So imagine in 3 months from now, you're down 20 pounds. You wake up with energy. You're actually excited to look in the mirror again. Your spouse notices the difference. Your kids notices your difference. You're showing up with confidence. And the best part is you know exactly what to do every week. You've got the plan, you've got support, and you're finally consistent. And then I'd pause. Every time I did this, I could feel the shift. I could see it in their face. Their posture changed, their voice changed. You could literally hear the excitement and how they responded because I wasn't selling them a program anymore. I was selling them their future identity of what they've always wanted to change. Listen, if you're hearing this right now and you're realizing your sales calls are missing that, like we're missing this, and that you're stuck selling sessions and contracts instead of futures and identities, then this is exactly what I help fix inside the Ardent system. So click the link below, book a free bottleneck game plan call with me, and we're going to baseline your sales process, show you your KPIs or improve your KPIs, how to install future pacing, nurturing sequences, SOPs, all that fun stuff. So let's wrap this up with the final piece of identity. So the identity close, okay? People don't buy workouts. They don't even buy coaching. They buy identity. They buy the chance to finally become the confident mom, the strong dad, the leader in their family, the first one in their family to never be overweight, the person that they see in their head, but they haven't been able to step into yet. When you tie the investment to identity, the decision becomes simple. So instead of saying, do you want to sign up for a 12-week program? I'd ask, do you want to stay the person that you've been for the last 12 months or 12 years? Or do you want to step into the person you told me you wanted to become? Because this is not pressure. This is accountability and this is leadership. And then what happens when you do this and when you do it right is the sale is practically inevitable. The process, like the only thing you might have to do is instead of them paying in full, they do a split payment, right? But the prospect feels relief because finally someone helped them connect the dots between their pain and their future. They stop stalling, right? Because they'll stop saying, I need to think about it. They'll start saying, yeah, I'm ready. Let's do this, right? So the fourth principle is stop selling contracts and start selling futures because people don't buy logic, they buy identity. And once you future pace and tie the close to their identity, they don't feel sold. They feel committed and ready to buy. Okay. So let's recap. I sucked at sales because I tried to convince instead of diagnose. I let price objections crush me instead of anchoring value. I panicked at objections instead of flipping them and closed on contracts instead of futures. So once I learned these 4 shifts, everything changed. Now, I promised you a bonus. So a few extra things that'll make all of this even smoother is first, if you don't want no shows, you need a nurturing sequence before and after the booking. If you want a video on that, comment below because it's a whole other thing. Okay? The second thing is you always want to book a meeting from a meeting. Bam, fam. Never leave a meeting or a consult without the next steps. And third, there are really only 3 outcomes, technically 3.5 if you include BAMFAM, which is yes, no, deposit. Anything else is a stall tactic or you suck at overcoming objections, right? So I'll go into deeper videos of each of those laters. If you really want, drop a comment below, right? But even just holding yourself to those rules will keep your pipeline clean and your confidence high. So if you're ready to stop winging sales and finally get a framework that actually works, click the link below to book a bottleneck game plan call with me. We will install this exact process. We will train your staff to install this exact this exact process. We'll role play. We have all the scripts, all that stuff ready. We have calls, blah, 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 blah. Okay, we also have a whole other thing with automation systems, SOPs, all that fun stuff. So we could plug this into your business, into your gym, into your sales system, so you can scale with confidence, and you don't have to spend so much more money on ads. Okay, because then you could just close the people that you have. Now, if this video helped, which I really hope it does, hit subscribe. Every week, I'm going to try to make an awesome masterclass type video like this, where I break down the systems that help gym owners and other coaches stop burning leads and start closing constantly. And if you want to keep learning right now, YouTube thinks you'll love the next video that's on your screen right now. So check that out, and I'll see you inside of that.